Hey, welcome everybody. So happy you're here. A little different view than the blue room at the Capitol, but we thought we would change it up and have a press availability here in Tulsa. And I'm from Tulsa, lived here for 20 plus years, and love coming back to T-Town. And we're also celebrating Police Week this week. And you know, we all want, as Oklahomans, we all want safe communities. And it's the men and women that serve in uniform that keep our communities safe. And so we just want to make sure that we support them, that the culture that they know in Oklahoma, that we have their back. And we're going to do whatever we can to help the police department here in the state of Oklahoma. So it's an honor for me to lead and get a chance to meet all the brave men and women all across the state of Oklahoma that serve us so well. Tulsa Police Department has faced some unprecedented challenges over the last few years as they've navigated some of the jurisdictional issues that the McGirt decision has kind of thrown them a curveball, but they've done a really good job of trying to keep the community safe. And that the Jim C. McGirt guy that started the whole thing, he's being released from prison, which is just unbelievable to us that as he would still be in prison if the state of Oklahoma had anything to do with it. But he's being released. I think they gave 30 days from like a May 3rd date. But Tulsa's had to navigate with professionalism and compassion throughout this whole process. Also, they've had to navigate some of the public, the police officer and public safety when it comes to tribal tags. And I think this is really important for Oklahomans to understand. I thank you guys for reporting on this. We have compacts with the state of Oklahoma with the Choctaws and the Chickasaws. So that means that when you see a Choctaw plate, that's in the state database. So our police department, highway patrol, they know who that is when they're pulling that over, just like any Oklahoma tag. They know who's driving that vehicle. They know if there's any bad guys or arrests for warrants, et cetera, et cetera. They can tell if the car's stolen, who it belongs to, the address, all that. The thing that's weird is the Cherokee plates. We don't have that visibility. So if you talk to law enforcement when they're pulling over a vehicle, that is the most dangerous part for a law enforcement, is not knowing who's in that vehicle, who it belongs to, is it stolen? We have no visibility into that. And then if you look at from a financial standpoint, I just called this morning, and the Cherokee play balance is $5.63 million. That's just over the last, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months, something like that, since they instituted that, maybe less than that, because 2 weeks ago, it was at 5.2 million. And that's just the amount of time that we've been able to track it. I think it's closer to 60 million if you extrapolate those numbers over the last 10 years that we've had no visibility to how to collect that. So that's just an extra charge on all of Oklahomans as we're trying to be top 10 in infrastructure, roads and bridges, et cetera, et cetera. So we just encourage the Cherokees to come to the table. We've offered a 1-year extension, a 10-year extension, very similar to the Choctaw and the Chickasaws compact. And the same thing with the Creeks, the Seminoles. We need to have a model compact where everybody can sign up and we can protect law enforcement and we can make sure we know who's driving on our streets. But our law enforcement, I just can't say enough good things about them. And I want to do everything I can to give them the tools to keep them safe as they're keeping us safe in the state of Oklahoma. And those compacts is just one easy way to get that done. It makes no sense to me how we can have tags that the state of Oklahoma and our law enforcement doesn't know who they are. But in 2021, we passed a law, signed it into law that said that we're not going to allow cities, municipalities, defund any police, anything like that. We saw that going on in other states over the last few years. And we said that's not going to happen in Oklahoma. We know how valuable they are to our community. We passed this year a PTSD bill to help with the mental health and the wellness. And, I've watched videos and I've been in the meetings with police around the state and the trauma that if you have to come up on and the one I watched was a drowning of a little boy, and the police has to respond to that, and they're doing CPR. And it was a 4-year-old, and then that female police officer has a 4-year-old at home, and then she immediately has to go back out and start working the streets. And those are the kind of things we need to be very, sympathetic and cautious, and make sure that we protect when we're seeing trauma like that our police have the tools and the resources, the counseling to keep them safe and help them process through that, because we need them to be healthy and have good judgment as they are protecting us. So we're going to continue to do that. As long as I'm governor, I'm going to give them the tools. I'm going to keep fighting for law and order, safe communities in the state of Oklahoma, and making sure that they have all the tools that they need. So with the opening statements there, we'll pause right now and open it up for questions and whatever's on your mind.
Mayor Bynum has proposed, maybe not necessarily a compact, but an agreement with the tribes. Are you okay with cities forming law enforcement agreements without the state?
I need to know exactly what he's talking about, but no, there's a process that a municipality cannot enter into an agreement without the governor, and then there's a joint committee in the legislature that gives an up or down on agreements. So that's how the process works, and we think that's probably the best way. The executive branch, the reason our founder set it up this way is I have a view of the whole state, right? And so the reason the legislature doesn't make decisions on some of the executive functions is because it's a body of 101 in the House and 48 in the Senate. If you think about it, it's hard for them to, for example, to make a decision to close a facility in one part of the state is always going to affect that one local representative. So they're going to be fighting with their colleagues to not do that, where the governor can make the best decision for the state of Oklahoma. And so we want to make sure that we have that view to keep all of Oklahoma safe. And so I'd probably stick with the way the system works today, but be interested in any help we can get from GT Bynum to keep us safe and keep law enforcement, not only Tulsa PD, but also Highway Patrol and the other municipalities in the eastern part of the state safe, to know who's driving on these roads would be very helpful.
So I'm not really clear why you've been particularly outspoken about the Cherokees, because they do have compact. It may not be what you want, but they do have a compact. None of the others have a compact at all. The Creeks, according to the figures I have, actually have far more tags out than the Cherokees do. So why are we focusing on the Cherokees?
It's a great question. The Cherokees do have a compact, but it's expiring this year. So that's why that's very important. But yeah, the Creeks have no compact, and that's absolutely wrong as well. The Cherokees have a compact today. The Creeks, the Seminoles, none of the rest of them do. So we need to get that done. But no, I'm not picking on them. I'm just telling Oklahomans the truth of why we need to get this done. And yeah, I can give you the numbers. The Cherokee tags, I don't believe that they definitely have more tags than the Creeks, 100%. So
That's not what the Creeks said.
Yeah, that's inaccurate. And I can give you the numbers by the end of this press conference. We might be able to get you the tags that drive on what the Creek tags owe the state of Oklahoma, and it's not as much. 99% sure it's not as much as the what did I tell you guys? 5.63 as of today or yesterday. I mean, could be, but probably not. If you've got more Creek tags running out there than Cherokees, unless all the Creek tags are actually buying Pike Pass. So I guess you could make that argument. But anyway, let's make sure we know who's driving on our roads is the main thing that I'm saying.
Can you talk about, you vetoed the Oklahoma Survivors Act, sorry, switching gears a little bit. Have you had a chance to look at the new version that the Senate rewrote, or do you have any sort of response on, the veto? Did it go with what you guys had talked about?
Yeah, so what she's talking about is the, I think it was called Senate Bill 1470. Is that right? Yeah, so we vetoed that because it wasn't only about domestic violence survivors. And we said, hey, give us a trailer bill that actually focuses on domestic violence and helping them. I'll 100% sign it. So I know that that's passed, I think, one chamber right now. I don't know if it's on my desk yet, but we're certainly reviewing that. That's exactly what we want. But remember, the bill that I vetoed, and you can talk to law enforcement, the Sheriff's Association, the district attorneys, what that bill did is it wasn't just talking about domestic violence victims. In other words, anybody could have been driving the wrong way on Highway 75 out here, fourth DUI, and killed a mom, a dad, and 2 kids. And then they had to consider something that happened 20 years ago in their past, and it wasn't related. And that was a step too far. So then everybody in prison could have come back and said, hey, I want my sentence reduced because of trauma that I had from my past. Well, I don't know about you, but I could think of a lot of trauma from my childhood, and everybody has issues that they can think about, or especially if you think it's going to get you a better, shorter sentence. I'm sure everybody could come up with something. But so that's why I vetoed that. But when you're talking about a domestic violence and a battered woman situation, and we absolutely want to consider that. So it's my understanding that they went back to the drawing board and they're actually putting a bill on my desk that does what they said the other one did. And so I'd be very happy, cannot wait to sign that. Nobody wants to protect our domestic violence abuse women more than I do.
Can we get an update from you on the budget, and would you sign a budget that had no tax cuts in it if the House and Senate agreed to it?
You know, I'm glad you asked. I thought this question might come. Okay. Can everybody see this okay? I'm sorry, we're going to block you out of this shot.
That's all right.
So I'm not going to speak to whether I'm going to veto or not veto the budget at this point, but I've been very clear. My priorities are this. Let's make sure that we protect the future of Oklahoma. I think Oklahomans know, as a businessman governor, that we've got an amazing economy, and our economy's been doing great. But we can't just keep spending every dime that we have, or we're going to put ourselves in a bad situation. So I said 3 things. Number 1, let's not spend more than reoccurring revenue. So in other words, if you have an income, most Oklahomans know that you can't spend more than your income. Okay, so that's one thing. Secondly, let's make sure we have a good savings account. Let's keep around $5 billion in our savings. We've had this record savings account. And then the next thing is inflation is hurting Oklahomans. Our buying power has gone way down. We got the grocery tax done, which alleviates so much. We were only one of 12 states that did that. But it's time that we do a tax cut for Oklahomans. And I'm talking about income tax. And let me tell you why this is important. I just talked to someone who had a job offer to move to Oklahoma, and they were in San Antonio, Texas. They said, we're excited about the opportunity to move to Tulsa. However, we're not excited about going from 0 income tax to now we're having to pay 4.75. So employer in Tulsa, you're going to have to up your offer to me because you've got to make up the difference. That's a real world example of what Oklahomans are facing. So now, did you know Arkansas just lowered their income tax? They're at 4.4%. So now if we want to hire somebody from Arkansas, we have to raise their salary and pay them more to make it equal for them to move to Oklahoma. Colorado is at 4.25%. Louisiana's 4.25%. Iowa just went to 3.99% in 2026. Kim Reynolds signed that, Governor Reynolds, in 2022. Texas, as we know, is 0. So my point is, Nebraska is also doing it. When we have excess revenue, we have to continue to choke off government, not grow government. Government is not the answer. And so this little budget shows you exactly where we're at. Here's our reoccurring revenue. That's our income. It's about $11.4 billion. All right. So that's how much we have as a state. Last year, our flat budget, in other words, all of our agencies, we spent $10.8 billion. Okay. So that's ongoing expenses and obligation. So the Senate tried to confuse you to say Governor Stitt's trying to cut agencies. Remember them saying that? Where are the cuts coming from? Y'all remember them asking that question? There are no cuts. So this is the funny math that sometimes big government uses. I'm not cutting anything. I would never suggest that we're cutting something. I'm just saying let's not grow it. So we have $600 million to play with. We absolutely can modestly grow government. Let's increase government another $300 million, but let's do a $300 million tax cut. We can do 1/4 point. We could flatten the bracket out. My latest proposal is let's leave the top bracket alone, 4.75, but let's take away any income tax that the poorest Oklahomans pay. So in other words, if you file jointly at $27,100, let's just take that away. There are no taxes until you hit above 27.1, and that would be just a true flat tax, and it helps the poorest Oklahomans the most. So these are the numbers, and I don't know how you can argue with that. But so I would hate to see the legislature just taking our last year's expenses and just raising them up and meeting that, and then we have no way to cut taxes. So you can't go through and try to play Santa Claus and I'm going to go through line by line and I'm going to do this and this and this and this and I'm going to raise all these good things because they're all good things, and then say, oh well, sorry governor, we don't have any room for tax cuts because we've spent all the money. I think that's the backward way to budget. I don't think business works that way. I don't think government should work that way. And remember, I wish I'd have brought my other graph. We've gone from about $6 billion in appropriations to last year, and I'm going to get confusing just for a second, we appropriated $12.9 billion. Why is it more than this? Because those were one-time items, all right? So we're taking savings and we're just investing strategically in one-time items. So I'm okay with investing in one-time items. I just don't want to increase the ongoing base level expenses of salaries and operations above what our reoccurring revenue is. But if we've got excess savings, it's okay to invest that in certain situations.
How do you feel about some of these funds like the legacy fund? You actually kind of proposed something like that at one time. How do you feel about those? They've set one up now for emergency management, where there's a nut goes in there and then you can borrow out of it and pay it back.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I mean, I proposed that last year to put $1 billion. North Dakota has a legacy fund. Big oil and gas states will usually take some, when they have excess revenue, instead of just spending it, let's set that aside in a legacy fund. I would have set it up a little differently, but basically the concept is we're borrowing from ourselves. They put this chunk of money aside and then they said, we'll just loan that to our agencies if they want to build a building instead of having to go back to the bond market, and then they just pay us back. So the fund just replenishes over time. So I think that's all good. That's really just capital improvements. That's not ongoing obligations. And we've set that money aside. And basically, we're just bonding ourselves, and then they pay that back over the next 20 years instead of going to the bond market, which I go to New York a couple times a year to try to advocate at Oklahoma's bond rating, and we've just got our bond rating improved, which helps our borrowing costs and helps us refinance debt, which is really, really helpful for lowering our interest cost.
How would you grade the budget?
Are we going to let this guy talk all the time?
Yeah. Do you have a pick for Tulsa's mayor?
Do you have a pick for Tulsa's mayor? No, I don't want to get into that. So no, I don't. Yeah.
Let's talk about the parental tax credit. How successful has that been this year for families and for the state? Have you seen a lot of people apply for it?
We have. I don't know the exact number, but they set aside, it's $150 million. And just so Oklahomans know, and I'll reiterate it, we put 698 or 700 million into public education. Okay. We did that last year. I've funded more in public education in my 5 years so far than they did for 25 years before I got here. So we're going to continue to fund public education, but setting aside $150 million for families that say, hey, for some reason, I need it. My kid's going to get a better education over here. It also creates competition. It injects competition into the system. That's all great. And rich people already have school choice. And now we just put school choice into every single working family. So now they can choose where they're going to send their kids to school. Super pumped. I've had police officers and fire and moms and dads and single families and come to me and just say, thank you so much, Governor. We just got approved for the tax credit. We didn't think we were going to be able to afford to keep our kid here or to put my first grader in this school. And we just didn't know how we were going to do it. And we're really pleased. It goes to 200 million next year, and then it goes to 250. And so we're going to see the Catholic charities have said they're going to start opening up some other schools in rural Oklahoma. So really excited about the injection of new schools. There's a new classical school, a charter school that opened in Tulsa, which I'm really excited about as well.
There's been a lot of criticism this week about your presence at the budget meetings. Do you have a response to
Criticism from who?
we've been getting some calls about you not being there, so.
Oh, about me not being.
Right. So do you have a response to that?
Well, I've been trying to grow the state, trying to meet with companies, and it's pretty clear what I want. And you saw I was there, I think, the first 2 or 3 budget meetings, but going line by line, increasing spending. I don't know how much clearer I can be. I've asked for flat budgets. I've asked for tax cuts. I want Oklahomans to know that if I could write the budget, you would already have we would already be probably about 1.5 points lower than we are today, because I would not have been growing government over the last 5 years. But being involved, that's what they're supposed to be doing. The legislature writes the budget, and out of the same side of their mouth, they say we don't want the governor involved in what our constitutional duties are. And so we just they need to get one done today. I just talked to a few of them before. I think they're meeting starting at 9 o'clock this morning, but they're just going through line by line. And if you don't start with how much revenue you have, how do you ever get to a tax cut? If you start by just increasing everybody's budget on whatever requests they're coming up with, there's no way to get to a tax cut. And that's where, and remember this, the money doesn't disappear. This is something that's super important. It just stays in Oklahomans' pocket to be spent at the grocery store and be spent at the restaurants in Tulsa, and take your kids to buy a new bicycle. And that money spends every time we've cut taxes, our revenue keeps going up. And so that's what's so, funny to me is they just want to continue. They think the government can spend the money better than Oklahomans can. And I just disagree with that fundamentally.
What are your thoughts on the progress of the budget summit? In the first day, you spoke with our OKC sister station and you hoped that it would be one and done in one day. Now we're past day 4 of meetings. Do you think there's going to be an agreement by the 31st, the deadline, or will there be a special session?
I think there will be. I think they'll get it. They'll get a budget done before the 31st. I really do. And again, but when you're now arguing about how much money to spend, I just think that's the wrong way to budget. I don't think that happens at the kitchen table when mom and dad are sitting there trying to budget their household items, or it doesn't happen in business. No business says, hey, our revenue grew this year. How can we increase all the expenses so we go into next year at 0? Okay, think about that. I mean, Williams Company does not just say, let's spend all the money that we have so we go into this next year at 0. That would be bad because revenue doesn't just always go up in a straight line. We're going to eventually have a downturn. That's why the savings is so important. That's why slowing the growth of government is so important. I could talk about it forever. I mean, you know the difference. You've heard my story about New York and Florida and the difference in their budgets because of the income tax. Florida has 0. New York has 10.9%. New York's budget is twice Florida's. New York's budget is $233 billion. Florida's budget is like $116 billion. And they have the same amount of people. Actually, Florida has more people than New York. So government can never spend enough money. And it's so important for Oklahomans to know, the hardworking Oklahomans watching this, they're taking their kids to soccer practice and piano lessons and trying to make ends meet. And big government in Oklahoma City shouldn't be just trying to spend more money. We should, when we have excess revenue, that means we've collected too much. We should give it back to the taxpayers. Thank you guys so much.